Hey, as we mentioned earlier, it's 2020, which means that we're not only in a new year, but we're also in a whole new decade. To help us take a look back at some of the best games released in the 2010s, we've got Andy McNamara from GameInformer here with us. Andy, thanks for being here, dude.
Oh yeah, for sure. Great.
I'm gonna do a cordial handshake and everything to really just break this in here. So Andy, you've been working with GameInformer for almost 30 years. How would you say this past decade stacks up to the previous ones?
Well, you know, technology's always moving forward, so I mean, like, it's always fun to see what new amazing things games can do. So you know, that's why I've been doing it for so long, because I'm always amazed. So I thought this, you know, like the kind of movement forward for open world games, I think took a major step forward. And just what we can do as far as multiplayer games as well has really changed, and I think transformed the way we play games. So it's been a lot of fun to watch, and obviously, playing with a friend is always the best, right? So the ability to play with more people has been really great. And also at the same time too, like I said, some of the single player games have gotten bigger and more immersive than they've ever been before, so a win-win.
The draw distances you see and how far you can go, and you say, I can actually reach that point that I see, right?
Everybody loves the joke. See that mountain in the background?
I can reach that there. Exactly, it's the same kind of feeling. So listen, we're gonna go ahead and go straight into this with your top 5 games of the decade. So I gotta ask, what is pick number 5, and why did it make the list?
Well, this one's easy. So, the hardest part of this is that I like to say is that you could put them in any order, right? When you're talking about the top 5 games of the decade, they're all like Game of the Year contenders, all amazing. So at this point, it's a little bit of taste and a little bit of arguing at the GameInformer office, let's say. So number 5 is God of War.
Okay.
So our Game of the Year last year, the return to Kratos' world that Sony Santa Monica put together is unbelievable. If you have not played it, it is a tour de force of combat. The story is emotional as a kind of a father-son adventure. I know a game is great when I go home and I start it and I'm like, clear my calendar, don't talk to me. I'm ordering in food until I finish this. And God of War was immaculate, I would even say.
It's funny, right? As a series, because you look at God of War and it's always hack, slash, stab, blood spill, look tough, but in this new God of War, it's a completely different take on the idea of what the game is supposed to be, and it rivals like its contemporaries in terms of stories.
Oh, for sure. I mean, let's just put it this way. It has moments that I did not see coming that are so obvious once you've seen them, right? But it is touching. It is an amazing tale that really, I think, explains more about Kratos than we've had since the original. Obviously, the you know, spoiler alert, in the original, when you finish the original God of War, there's a very touching moment between Kratos and his relationship to his family, right? And that's as far as I'll go. And they kind of don't really, they repeat that, but it doesn't have that much power. And this is the first game that not only has Kratos been powerful and, you know, really is a beast as far as combat goes, but that the story is touching and I think makes you feel something for Kratos, which is crazy to say, like, you know, I'm sympathetic to the God of War, right?
The empathy, this father figure that you suddenly see, because they had a winning formula, right? They could have kept doing the same God of War they did. What do you think made them choose to go this direction in the God of War series that makes them go, you know what, I think it's time for a change?
I mean, obviously the director, Corey, I think had a lot to do with that. He drove this newer vision, and I think, you know, Sony, as interactive entertainment, you know, they've really been pushing themselves as far as like making games that I think stand out in the field. I mean, like I think if you work at Sony Worldwide Studios and you're like, I just want to make an action game, I'm sure you could, but when you're dealing with something at the level of God of War, I think they're looking for something that really pushes the boundaries. And I think that's not necessarily a requirement, but they allow people to do that. And I think when creative people get that opportunity like they did with this particular game, they took some chances. I mean, having a companion in games is always difficult, right? And to think that, boy, would have been...
It's a meme, but it works, right?
It does. Would have worked, and also worked so well in game, and that, you know, those kind of challenges are very difficult in game development, and for them to tackle those, and for the entire game to be, I felt, and I think the team at the office feels the same way, so engaging, you know, kudos to them. I mean, it really is a feat.
It makes me wonder if this is the last time we're going to see, you know, God of War at this level, or this is the apex as high as it can get, you know?
I mean, I have to imagine we're going to get a little bit more of
some stuff.
Yeah, some stuff.
I think there's
more to the boys' story.
Right, we don't want to go into details of what might happen, but obviously that. Well, anytime you're making an all-decade list, we're talking about The Boy and God of War, the pyres are going to be lit, and people are going to be like asking, why this game? So to add fuel to that fire, what is pick number 4?
Pick number 4. We love our RPGs, to be clear. And Mass Effect 2 is
it's a good game.
it is a great game.
Really good game.
Obviously, the series has lots of people that get mad about the ending of 3. We feel the trilogy is fantastic. The first game has its own vibe, but 2 is when all the parts kind of come together.
Exactly.
Right, when the combat starts to feel really great, the stories and the characters really start to develop. In Mass Effect 2, that's when you find yourself invested in that world.
Yes.
When you really, really start to say to yourself, this is the sci-fi game I've always wanted, right?
It's the meat of the sandwich. 1 was the condiment, 3 is the heel bread that kind of everybody eats and doesn't like. Maybe they do like it, but 2 is the meat, because you're taking the story from 1, the continuation, into 2, and everything you do in 2 matters in 3.
Yes.
I think it raises the importance level up to.
Oh, for sure. I've often, when we argue about people that don't like Mass Effect 3.
Yes.
Right? The thing I always think about Mass Effect 3 is that they're like, I don't like the ending. I'm like, the whole game is the ending. It is one giant, drawn-out ending, right? And so I think that points to how important Mass Effect 2 is in that trilogy. That it is the linchpin that makes everything happen in that series, because it leads to 3, which, like I said, is the entire ending that you kind of lead to. So that is why 2, with its characters and with its combat and with, I think, its originality,
yes,
and in the space and in RPGs is one of the reasons why, for us, it is up there and number 4.
And that's important too, I think, is space, because space is a very sacred place. Think about things like Star Wars, Star Trek, Star Citizen to some people someday, hopefully. What do you think that Mass Effect did so well in space that made it work?
I mean, I think their development of their characters, right? I mean, I think that's one of the things is that science fiction does a great job of mirroring society, right? And the way society works, and that's its trick, right? And that's the difference between great sci-fi and bad sci-fi.
Yes.
And Mass Effect, through its characters, found a way to reach and connect with people, right? I mean, so many of the characters, even when I'd meet them, I'd be like, this person's an idiot. And then hours later, I was like, favorite person ever, right? And I think that says something about the writing, about the narrative, and about what they did as far as mirroring humanity through the lens of sci-fi. And that's why it's a great, and I mean, by the way, not just of this decade, and any of these games I'm talking about, I mean, in all of games, if we worked on a top 200 list, top 300 list, this is what we call at our office a slam dunk, right? I mean, it is a game and a series that we love. And I know for me, I have been begging anyone that will listen to me at any event that is associated with BioWare or EA, I'm like, make that redo where you do all 3 of the games.
I was going to ask about remasters too.
I know.
Has it been long enough?
I think it has.
Usually, these days, it's 5 years is remaster time. So.
And I think the thing is too is that because 1, 2, and 3 have a different combat system as it kind of works its way across. That I would love to see them turn the trilogy into one kind of unified box set. Now, obviously, we have to be careful what we wish for. We don't want special edition Star Wars.
Right.
To be clear.
Right.
But I do think that you could standardize the combat and maybe fill in some gaps and do some other interesting things that I think could be really, really compelling. Because I do worry at times that Mass Effect may not be coming back. You know what I mean?
I don't say that. Come on, buddy.
Well, until I know what's happening, I get worried.
I know. I played Andromeda as well, and I enjoyed it, and I read the books from it, and I'm like, you always want more.
You always want more. And I know that they pointed out they're working on the next Dragon Age.
Yes.
Anthem has been something they've been spending time on, and that may come back or may kind of try to re-release. But I think, I don't know. Everyone talks about KOTOR and Mass Effect, right, as their favorite
upper echelon, man, of RPG environments. Yeah.
Yes, and so I would love to see them come back to Mass Effect. I mean, Commander Shepard was great, but I think if they managed to just do, as I kind of mentioned before, they had a great sci-fi universe. Keep building on it.
Agreed.
Right? You know what I mean? It shows the power of great narrative and an environment that we don't get as often. Like, we get plenty of fantasy worlds, right? I mean, it's pretty common in games, but it's rare that we get a truly compelling science fiction story. Like, that's why people love Halo and things like that. It's like it takes us to another world, and
place you want to be and stay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think Mass Effect is definitely top tier franchises, and Mass Effect 2, is the culmination of all that work.
It's well said. Mass Effect 2 is an excellent choice for pick number 4. Obviously, Mass Effect 3 is not going to be your third choice, unless we're patching this video later on. Cha-cha-cha-cha. So I got to ask, what is pick number 3 of the decade?
Did I mention that we like RPGs?
Yeah, you touched on that a little bit.
I touched on that. So, Witcher 3.
Oh, man, what a great choice.
So you can't say enough about what CD Projekt has done, right?
Yeah.
And I remember the first time I saw it, I sat in this room at E3, and they were like, we're going to show you an example of a side quest. And I was like, I'd been in that meeting before, right?
You're already turning the brain like, all right, show it to me, I guess.
Cool, right? And I think for a lot of people, we always think, the side quests, that's not the meat, right, of any adventure. And they went on to prove, as I think, another company that I think hits at that level, being Rockstar, they were like, this isn't just some side story or some side quest where you go get someone a loaf of bread and it's done, right? That they are meaty, amazing stories that flush out the world and tell more about your character and what you're doing. And I was like, wow, that was really impressive. We went on this whole hour-long, we tracked down this werewolf and all these kind of things, and it's just like, it was so amazing in the way that the characters interacted, and the way you learned story, and the way you interacted with people to learn about what was going on, right? And I was like, oh, well, they did one of those, right? And then you start to learn, as you explore the world of Witcher, that it's not just one, that the world is full of those kind of things.
The entire thing is a masterclass in storytelling, from the main quest to side quests.
Yes.
When you first start off with the Baron quest line in the main story, which by itself is so good, and I feel like when main quests are so good, you don't want to deviate from that. But you do a side quest, next thing you know, you have 2 stories you want to complete the exact same time.
I would say there's times I'm like, I don't even know what I'm on, but it doesn't matter, right? You just kind of have to follow your heart a bit in Witcher, and I think that's its charm, right? That's where it's like truly amazing. I think that's why people are excited about Cyberpunk. That's why, you know what I mean? Like, I think Witcher 3 was a breakout game for them. They proved that they had the chops, unlike few game studios do, to make a game at that kind of scope. I do think you could. There's people that want to, complain about the combat, which is probably the weakest part of Witcher across the board, but it's solid, and I think it shows that what they're capable of, and excites me for Cyberpunk, and also too at the same time too, like, they're going to make another Witcher someday, and that would be, hopefully that's a game of the decade when I'm back talking about games of the decade next decade. But it's their ability to tell a story, to create a world, and have that world be so full is extraordinary.
And they did it 3 times, because you play the Wild Hunt and you think, wow, I hope they're not a one-trick pony. And they're like, surprise, how about Blood and Wine?
Yeah.
How about Hearts of Stone? And individually, those, well, even though they're expansions of a way, those are games that are good enough to stand on their own.
Easily.
Hearts of Stone, for me, like, having Gaunter Dem as the villain was haunting and chilling. And the way Blood and Wine told the story about the 2, the vampires taking place, it brought you back to the Witcher, the original story. We're like, I don't want to stop playing this again.
Exactly, and I think that's the thing that was, a lot of people, I know we had this conversation, like, oh, it's the expansion pack, and you're like, no, it's not an expansion pack. It's not.
It's full-fledged game.
It's like no joke, and that was the thing we had trouble, like, even when we talk about our games of the year sometimes, we're like, I mean, this expansion pack is competitive with full-fledged games.
Yes, and you had Gwent too, of course.
Yes, exactly.
In the game, and actually later as a spin-off as well.
Correct, and so you got to give CG Projekt amazing work by them, especially because I think a lot of people that played Witcher 2 would say, they were like, they would come out and they'd say, like, hey, you need to play this game. There are actual choices in this thing that matter. These guys are telling stories and doing things that we're not seeing anywhere else. People go, oh yeah, whatever, Witcher, it's the second one, I don't care, blah, blah, blah. And then Witcher 3 came along, and I thought really showed the world what they had been doing, right? And was their time to kind of come out and be like, In the past, I think I would have said it's CD Projekt Red, and people would have gone, "What? I don't know what that is."
What does that mean?
And now you say
words.
it, and now it means something, right? And I think that shows how important this game was to this last.
3 is
decade.
always scary, I think, too, because you have 1, the starter, 2 is the improvement, and 3 is like, did you learn from the first 2? In Witcher 3, they obviously did.
They obviously
Now,
did.
I'm curious, too, because your third choice would have been my first choice for the decade.
Okay.
So now I have to know what beats it. What's number 2?
Number 2 is Skyrim.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. Okay.
And that will be the end of our RPGs. But Skyrim is, I think, an RPG that changed every RPG, right? Everything that followed it has been different because of the work that they've done. The fact that it's a little bit older, right? And I know the joke is that it's like, what platform have they not put it on, right?
They even memed themselves at E3.
Yes.
It was beautiful. It was nicely done.
It was indeed. Yeah. But I think the reason it is everywhere, and I think the reason that people engage in it is because it is such a great example of choice and creating your own character and your own world. And those are the kind of things that I think led to like Zelda's changes, like for Breath of the Wild.
True, yeah.
I think Witcher is influenced by it. I think it was one of the most influential RPGs for decades, by the way, not even just the last decade. So Skyrim, I think, is a very, very important game in the world of RPGs.
I was going to ask about that, if you think that's the main differentiator, because the previous 3 games that you mentioned for top 5 games of the decade, they're kind of the same style, which is where you have this massive open world where you have a main quest with side quests, but yet Skyrim is the one that stands tall amongst all those.
Yeah, and I think that's, I mean, we are giving it points, and that's the thing is, once I say it in any order, by the way, there are 10 editors at GameInformer, and we all have a different version of this list in a different, order, and I think we are definitely giving it credit for what I feel is like innovating in the space and changing the way and what we expect from RPGs.
You think it's better than the previous releases, like the Morrowind, Oblivion, Daggerfall, all those?
There are people that will say that say that Morrowind is the best,
Yep.
right, without fail, and Oblivion has its fans through and through. But I think once again, Skyrim is the one that changes the dynamic and changes the world, and I think plays off all the lessons learned from Morrowind and Oblivion. So. You could win that argument, by the way, and I think someone has at the office. To be very clear, right? And we've gone through it a million times. But Skyrim is a tough choice, right? And like I said, especially when we're talking about Mass Effect, we're talking about Witcher.
Yeah.
And like you said, I think there are people that think other things in the series for Elder Scrolls are better than Skyrim. So I respect that opinion a lot. But we give it credit for the way that it has changed the way RPGs basically happen now and will happen in the future.
I think the nuances really make the game too. The small things like having a companion like Lydia, which isn't that great to start off with, or having characters that suddenly walk on top of chairs and they're like, "Hello, what brings you here?" And you're like, I like that. That's charming. This makes this game kind of cool, and carrying capacities.
It certainly has its bugs, right?
Yeah.
And famous bugs, arrow to the knee. I mean, we have all kinds of things that have happened and been a part of its tale. I think for me, at least for me personally, it's one of those games I always play as the good guy. That's just my thing. And Skyrim,
very altruistic of you.
I don't know why. It's a weird thing for me. But Skyrim was one of the first games where it pushed who I thought I was in the world, right, and who I defined myself as. I did eventually make this choice. It got me right to the precipice of like giving an opportunity to be evil, and I was like, and you get this cool ring if you do it. And I was like, all right, they're dead.
That's the caveat, right? All it takes is a ring, and next thing you know, you're a bad person.
And then I was like, at that point, it's actually very liberating for me as a playthrough, because at that point, I was like, well, gloves are off. Let's screw around in this world, right, and have a good time and be chaotic evil, right, and take those things. And I think that's part of it, is that you get that choice in this game, that it is not a predetermined end for you. It is a chance for you to indeed role play in a role-playing game, which is difficult to do, especially when you're trying to build in so much narrative into your world and your space. And so I think that's an important thing that Skyrim does, and the things that the Elder Scrolls have done, and is the reason that it's such a great series.
It's a good choice for number 2. We're finally at the one that matters the most. So at 5, we obviously had God of War, great choice right there. And then at number 4, I believe we went down the route of Mass Effect 2.
You are correct.
Number 3 was Witcher 3, my choice. Number 2 is Skyrim right now. So tell me, what is the one that stands tall above all these for top game the last decade?
It's tough to choose this game. especially because I feel that a lot of lessons learned in this game have gone on to make Red Dead Redemption 2 an amazing game.
There it is. You know what it's going to be.
But Grand Theft Auto 5 is indeed our game of the decade.
It's so weird that you mentioned that too, because you have Red Dead Redemption 2 in this decade. Why GTA 5 over Red Dead 2?
That's a tough one.
Was that an office argument as well?
Yes, it is. Yeah. Yes. I mean, I think for how good, by the way, that I'd like to point out, as world builders, I think everyone else has been in that list, right? And I think that's an important thing in games that gets forgotten, is that creating the worlds that you want to live in, that you want to spend time in, is magical. It's something that it's why people still talk about Star Wars today. They wanted to be in that universe, right? The power of the universe is something. And Grand Theft Auto 5 is like this gangster world, and you think, why do I want to be there, right? And it's the stories that they tell that are so compelling. It's the world that they build that is so rich and so deep that you find yourself going back and exploring things that you would never imagine you would explore. And I think Rockstar, as a group, like when you remove a quest from a game, like it's kind of like a house of cards. Like things start to fall apart. That game, from beginning to end, no matter where you drive in the world and what you do, helps you get to where you're going. It is such an amazing piece of software. It's a pretty clean game, right? You know, we mock Skyrim.
Very few bugs, man.
For like its bugs, and they're like, well, you get this big open world, that's what you get, right? No. GTA 5 did it, and then they did GTA Online, which
the RP community is huge in that.
It's huge, and like they're making games in Grand Theft Auto, that a brand new genre, basically. Role-playing games as a game and as an experience, and something you can watch online, is created in Grand Theft Auto. And all the things that they've done, the way that people and the way the community has taken control of the world and influenced the world and shown how community and games go hand in hand, and how that is the future, and how playing with others and interacting with others and building that camaraderie in a space matters. And I cannot think of a better example of that than GTA 5. It is the biggest and best-selling game of all time. And
for good reason, obviously.
And for good reason. It is amazing. It is, I don't know who hasn't played it, right? I don't know who I can tell you should go play it.
It's a different perspective, too, because usually in the first few games, you're saving a galaxy, you're saving a loved one, you're saving and honoring the wishes of someone else. And in this game, you're not. You're completely selfish, all three of you. It's something to wash your hands clean up because you're not a hero in a way. And I think that's kind of the lens we focus on, is that this game wants us to play more because we're looking at a completely different perspective.
Yes. I think that's one of the things that the Housers do so well, is that they, kind of like the best movies, they create characters that we want to be but would never want to be, and
Absolutely
teach us
not.
things.
No, yeah,
and
exactly.
teach us things about ourselves through the lens of these horrible people.
Yep.
Right? I think that's the other thing that Red Dead does.
Yep.
When you talk about Red Dead Redemption, is that, you start to sympathize and understand their problems, but also despise their decisions and the choices they make.
Like real-life friends.
Yes.
Exactly. It's like real-life people you know.
And that's very hard to do, to make characters that powerful. And I think they have done that. I mean, I think they have created worlds and characters that are that important. I think they are an example of all the previous 4 entries that I talked about in this top 5, that all culminates in one game, and that game is GTA 5. And I actually think it's an easy choice.
Okay, I can't disagree with that. I mean, that was an amazing top 5, from God of War 5 to Mass Effect 2, Witcher 3, Skyrim, and of course, GTA 5. Fantastic choices. Andy, I want to thank you so much for being with us here today. It's been absolutely stellar.
You got it.
A cordial handshake. So where can people find out more about Game Informer and check out more amazing content from you and your team?
We got our website. We have a podcast. You can pick it up in the GameStop stores. We have, we do the magazine. It just keeps coming, right? And we really think we do some really interesting stuff. This year we did a celebration of the 25th anniversary of PlayStation. Our next issue, I don't think I can quite share yet, but we've got some great issues planned for this year, and some really great games that I think everyone will enjoy. So please check out Game Informer.
Well, we appreciate that very much. Thank you so much, Andy. We'll have more with Andy later in the show, but for now, we need to take a break. GameStop TV will be right back. Hey, you made it all the way through the video, and I appreciate that. Got a little reward for you. Watch this. New year, same me. Nothing's changing. Like, subscribe, and comment. Appreciate it.